All right, get ready to dive deep because today we're tackling building construction. All those notes and articles you've got stacked up. We're going to break down how those incredible structures actually stand up, from the massive skeletons of skyscrapers to even the surprising comeback of bamboo as a building material.
It really is amazing how much we just kind of, take for granted when we walk into a building. There's this whole hidden world of like engineering and design that's going on behind the scenes, making sure these structures don't just crumble.
For sure. So let's start at the very beginning. The foundation, both literally and figuratively. We're talking about structural integrity. The idea that a building can withstand not just like its own weight, but all sorts of pressures like wind and earthquakes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like think of a Jenga tower, right? Pull out the wrong block and boom, the whole thing collapses. Structural integrity is about making sure all the parts of a building work together to handle those forces and prevent, well, a collapse.
Right. And our source principles of building construction really emphasizes how important it is to uh, understand the ground beneath a building. Why is that so crucial? I mean, it's not like we're building on quicksand usually.
Well, you might be surprised. Soil can be super different depending on where you are, and something called bearing capacity, which basically means like how much weight the soil can hold, that directly impacts what kind of foundation you need. Building a giant skyscraper on soft clay, totally different from building on bedrock. It's kind of like choosing the right shoes for the terrain. You know what I mean?
Makes sense. You wouldn't wear high heels for a hike, that's for sure. So the foundation is like the building's footwear, designed for whatever ground it's standing on. All right, so let's move up from the ground level now and talk about the building blocks themselves. The materials, we've got the classics, concrete, steel, brick, but I'm seeing bamboo pop up more and more in our research here. Is it really strong enough for construction, though?
Bamboo might seem kind of trendy now, but it's actually been used for ages in some parts of the world. And get this, its tensile strength, which is how much it can resist being pulled apart, is actually comparable to steel. Plus, it grows super fast, so that makes it a much more sustainable choice compared to, say, the lower growing timber.
Wow, I never knew bamboo was such a powerhouse. And speaking of cool materials, our notes mention 3D printed buildings. Is this like science fiction or is this really happening now?
3D printed buildings are definitely not just a fantasy anymore. They're being built. Picture these massive robotic arms like extruding concrete to create whole walls, floors, even entire houses. It's still a pretty new technology, but it could totally revolutionize construction. Think about it. Less waste, faster build times, and you can create some really wild designs.
It's mind-blowing. Okay, so even with all the cool tech and fancy materials, a building isn't just about like throwing stuff together, right? It needs to have a purpose.
Absolutely. A well-designed building isn't just about how it looks, it's about functionality. Like, how do you maximize space, bring in natural light, and create an environment that's both practical and enjoyable, for the people actually using the building.
Yeah, it's the difference between, say, a house and a home. One's just a structure, the other is designed for how people live in it.
Exactly. Think about the best building you've ever been in, from a user standpoint. Was it easy to get around? Did it have a lot of natural light? Could everyone access it easily? All those things are a result of good design, not just putting up some walls.
That's true. I'm already starting to look at buildings differently now, noticing all these little details that add up to the overall experience. But let's be real, all the amazing design and materials in the world don't matter if a building isn't safe, right?
Totally. Safety has to come first. That's where things like fire-resistant materials, clear escape routes, and reliable alarm systems come in. Building codes might seem kind of boring, but they exist for a reason, preventing disasters and saving lives.
It's not just about looking good then, it's about being ready for, well, anything. Makes you realize the responsibility those designers and builders have.
Absolutely. And it's not just the architects and engineers. Construction is a team effort. Everyone on the crew, from the project manager to, the electricians and plumbers, all play a vital role in making sure the building is both safe and functional.
Oh, that reminds me, one thing I found super interesting in our research was this whole concept of project management. It's not something you actually see in the finished building, but it seems really important in keeping the whole process running smoothly.
It's like, imagine trying to conduct an orchestra without a conductor. Total chaos, right? Project management is like that conductor for construction. They keep everything on track, from budgeting and scheduling to making sure the quality is good and everyone's communicating.
So they're kind of like the unsung heroes, making sure the project doesn't turn into a complete disaster and that everything gets finished on time and on budget.
Pretty much. Good project management means fewer delays, fewer cost overruns, and in the end, a much better building. It's like the glue that holds the whole thing together. You wouldn't believe how much planning goes into this behind the scenes part of construction. Welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into, well, what's behind those walls we see every day.
Right. It's kind of wild how much we just don't even think about, right? Like last time we were talking about bamboo and even 3D printed buildings, but now let's, I guess you could say, poke behind the curtain and see what systems are actually making these buildings work.
Yeah, it's like almost like this whole network, like veins and arteries in a way, carrying the lifeblood of a building, electricity, water, air, even data now.
Interesting. So our notes mentioned something called building services. What exactly falls under that umbrella?
Building services, well, it's basically all the systems that make a building, actually livable and functional. So we're talking electrical wiring, lights, plumbing, drainage, HVAC, fire protection systems, even things like elevators and security.
It's easy to forget about all that stuff, but imagine a building with like no running water or heat or even lights. Not exactly a place you'd want to be.
No, definitely not. Building services are often kind of hidden away, behind walls and ceilings and such, but they're totally essential for, well, pretty much everything. Our comfort, health, safety. It's what lets us live and work in these structures without, like, even really thinking about it.
It's like the difference between a human body and just a skeleton, right? The skeleton's a structure, but you need the organs and systems to make it, well, alive.
Yeah, I like that analogy. And kind of like the human body, each system in a building needs to be carefully designed and work with the others so everything runs smoothly.
Right, so let's break these systems down a bit more, starting with, I guess, the most obvious one, electricity. What's involved in getting power to all those outlets and lights and everything?
Well, it all starts with the connection to the power grid, of course. From there, it's a whole network of wires and circuits carefully planned out, to distribute electricity throughout the whole building. Electricians have to make sure each circuit can handle the load so there's no risk of like overloading and starting a fire.
So it's not as easy as just plugging in a few extension cords then.
Nope, definitely not. Electrical systems are designed to meet very specific codes and standards. You have to think about safety and efficiency. Everything from, what appliances will be used to even potential future expansion. You got to plan ahead.
Right. And speaking of the essentials, we got to talk about plumbing. Clean water in, wastewater out. Sounds simple enough, but I'm guessing it's more complicated than that.
Well, plumbing is another one of those things that needs a lot of careful planning. You're installing pipes for both fresh water and wastewater. You got to make sure there's proper drainage and ventilation too, so you don't end up with, bad smells and potential health hazards.
And I imagine water pressure is a big deal, especially in taller buildings.
Oh yeah, for sure. You often need pumps and pressure regulators to make sure there's enough force to get the water to all the floors, especially in like high rises. Getting water to flow up to that penthouse suite is a feat of engineering.
All this talk of water is making me think of those giant water heaters you see sometimes. Why are those things so big?
Well, think about it. Water heating is a big part of building services, especially in places that get cold. A lot of large buildings will have a centralized system so they can provide hot water to multiple units or areas. It can get pretty complex, involving boilers, storage tanks, and this whole network of pipes to distribute the hot water everywhere it needs to go.
Right, right. Okay, so we've got electricity, plumbing, hot water. What about keeping the air inside fresh and comfortable? That's where HVAC comes in, right?
Exactly. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It's super important for making sure the people inside the building are, comfortable and healthy. These systems control the temperature, humidity, air quality, and they basically make sure the indoor environment is good regardless of what the weather's doing outside.
I bet that's even more important in places with like extreme temperatures, super hot summers or really cold winters.
Oh, absolutely. In hot climates, AC is basically a necessity. In colder areas, you need the heating system to keep things warm and stop pipes from freezing. And ventilation is crucial everywhere, to circulate fresh air and keep pollutants from building up.
So it's like the HVAC system is kind of like the building's lungs in a way, breathing in the fresh air and getting rid of the stale air.
Aha, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And just like our lungs got to be healthy, HVAC systems need regular maintenance to make sure they're working, right? Changing filters, cleaning ducts, and just general inspections to prevent breakdowns and keep the air quality good.
Starting to see a theme here. All these hidden systems, they require a lot of expertise and attention to keep them running smoothly.
Yeah, definitely. And there's even more to it than what we've talked about so far. Fire protection with the sprinklers and alarms, that's critical for safety. Then you've got elevators, which are surprisingly complex with all the mechanics and electronics involved, and security systems with all the cameras and sensors. It's really a whole interconnected world behind those walls, all working to create an environment that's comfortable, safe, and functional.
All right, welcome back, everyone. For this last part of our deep dive, we're going to shift gears a bit and see how all these sustainable building practices we've been talking about actually translate into real buildings. Are these just fancy ideas, or are they shaping the structures we see every day?
It's really cool to see sustainable design, actually being put into practice. We're seeing some amazing buildings that are really pushing the boundaries, proving that you can be eco-friendly and still create beautiful and functional spaces.
Yeah, for sure. Like our notes mentioned this building, the Bullitt Center in Seattle. It's been called the greenest commercial building in the world, but what makes it so special? Is it actually as self-sufficient as they claim?
The Bullitt Center is a perfect example of what you can achieve when sustainability is part of the plan from the very start. Imagine a skyscraper that generates all its own power from solar panels. It collects and reuses rainwater and even composts its waste. That's basically the Bullitt Center in a nutshell.
That's amazing. It sounds like something out of the future. But sustainable building isn't just about high-tech stuff, right? Our research also talked about how there's this renewed interest in traditional building techniques and natural materials. It seems kind of counterintuitive, going back to the past to build the future.
It is interesting how, ancient wisdom can influence modern design. Materials like rammed earth and bamboo, which have been used for centuries in traditional architecture, they're making a comeback. And they make sense. They last a long time, take less energy to produce than, say, typical building materials, and they often have this unique look that really connects us to nature.
So it's kind of like taking the best of both worlds, combining these old techniques with what we know now to make buildings that are sustainable and beautiful. Oh, and speaking of connecting with nature, our notes mention something called biophilic design. What is that exactly? Sounds like we're bringing the outdoors inside.
Biophilic design is all about incorporating elements of nature into buildings. So think natural light, living walls, rooftop gardens, and even water features that mimic the sounds of like a stream. It's not just about how it looks either. There's actually research that shows these natural elements can help reduce stress, improve focus, and just generally make people feel better.
Wow, so it's like bringing the benefits of nature into our everyday lives, even in busy cities. Makes you wonder why we ever thought separating ourselves from nature was a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Biophilic design is kind of challenging that separation and, recognizing that humans do better when we're connected to the natural world. And it's not limited to just offices and homes. Imagine hospitals with healing gardens, schools with outdoor classrooms, even airports with calming green spaces. It could really change how we think about these spaces.
It's a cool vision of the future, where buildings work with nature, not against it. This whole deep dive has really changed how I see buildings. It's not just about bricks and mortar. It's about the thought and ingenuity that goes into making these structures work and how we can build in a way that's better for the planet and for us.
Yeah, and it's important to remember this is just the start. As technology keeps advancing and we learn more about sustainability, we're going to see even more innovative solutions and, just incredible designs. The future of building is really exciting, and it's being shaped by us realizing that we need to be more mindful of our impact on the planet.
Well said. So, to everyone listening, next time you walk into a building, take a second to think about all the work that went into creating it, the hidden systems, the sustainable features, maybe even some of that biophilic magic. And if this deep dive has piqued your interest in the world of construction and design, be sure to subscribe for more explorations into this fascinating field. We've got a lot more to uncover.